So what can we say about Bruno Groening that Bruno Groening just baffles the mind. I mean, think about it. Someone who's able to stand before thousands of people. They estimated that the crowds sometimes were as big as 30,000 people. And just simply talk to people and radiate energy and to heal. We don't know how many people were healed at once. But for the most unimaginable events to occur, for blind people to start to see, people with birth defects to have the birth defects healed, terminal cases of cancer, paralysis, insanity to just vanish. And in his name, and more importantly, through following his teachings, such amazing things are still happening today, even though he's not physically with us. What can you say about such a person? It's... When I really think about it, I can't think about it because it's just beyond the mind, really. And yet Bruno Groening gave us a context to where we can actually understand Bruno Groening. The first thing is Bruno Groening said he never healed anyone. He says it, meaning the divine energy, it heals. That Bruno Groening, and in fact all of us, are actually just receivers and transmitters. And Bruno Groening just had the capacity much stronger than the average person. So, on the one hand, Bruno Groening gives us a very simple explanation about how the seemingly impossible is very possible through God and through receiving God. And yet, to really stop and think about it, someone who's blind regaining their vision, someone who's insane for that insanity to just leave, someone on their deathbed to stand up completely healed. While Bruno gives a very simple logical explanation about how that happens, to really think about it, my mind, as we say in English, my mind gets blown away. And as amazing as the physical healings are, and I've experienced quite a few in my own body, and I've met a lot of people, and they're just amazing. They're joyful. They're worthy of celebration. Bruno said that was only 10% of his work. 10%. So what's the other 90%? One of the things that Bruno Groening said is that he was putting a ring around the world. That whoever wanted the good, that energy would be available to them, even if they hadn't heard the name Bruno Groening. that his coming here, that he was doing a work, while we could see the visible work he did, the healing, the teaching, that he was doing some profound work on this entire planet. In fact, he said the evil is trying to destroy this planet, and I have put a ring around this planet to protect it. So according to Bruno Groening, this planet was on the brink of destruction or something horrific. I don't know that he went into all the details. And he came here to literally save this planet. And he did something which I don't understand. I just know that he said that he did it. As Greta Hausler said, she knew Bruno Groening very well, she said he seemed to know everything, and yet he had never read a single book. He spoke in language very simple, very straightforward, nothing esoteric, and seemed to explain life. He seemed to know what life was, how it operated, and most importantly, how we can successfully navigate and operate life, this game of life. He went so far as to say that there is a game in life, in a sense that life is a game. He said life on Earth is a play school. And if we step outside the rules, it suddenly quickly becomes not fun. Not a fun game. So, Bruno Groening came here to help and heal. And the healings, he said, were only 10%. And then he also came here to some extent to save this planet. That this planet was in grave danger. And Bruno Groening did something, which, again, I can only tell you what he said. If I can find the quote, I'll read it tonight. But that's not all he came to do, and he came to show us how to live and a way of life. But that's not all he came to do, as if that isn't enough. To heal. Who knows how many people while he's in his body, and who knows how many people, I would just estimate hundreds of thousands, both while he was in his body and since he's left. And to leave behind a teaching that where these things we call miracles still operate. But that's not all he came to do. Here's a quote from Bruno. It's just about one thing really, about that which is purely divine, which is inside man, and that is his soul. Because it is through his soul that man has the pure divine reception, the reception of the divine transmission. When man himself, who is truly only a ghost of reality, lives within evil's will, the soul shuts off. Man loses his connection to God. He then becomes a godless man. To save the soul, dear friends, this purely divine soul, that is not grasped by Satan's claws, that is what it is all about. That is what this is all about. Let's just say I'm the little soul caregiver. I take care of the soul. I open it up. I know how to open it to set man free. Building up the soul means that man receives again through the soul which God gave him in his body, through which he can receive the divine transmission. So Bruno came here to save souls from evil and to show us the way to free ourselves from evil, that we have a part in it. So let's spend a little time in silence. If it feels right, asking Bruno's help to find freedom, to receive the divine transmission. Let's continue to tune in together. So here's a quote of Bruno's. Human beings have received from God as a gift their inviolable free will to stand by either good or evil, even if they make life hell through their lack of understanding, greed, and vengefulness towards one another, and even threaten or annihilate the bodies of other people. This still remains at the level of guilt and retribution in the destiny they make for themselves. That is, everyone must, as long as they do not walk the path of non-violence, experience and carry to term in their own bodies everything they have caused or done to other people. This laborious, lengthy, and heavy rhythm of birth and death has been in operation since human beings first abandoned the divine path. So, until we walk the path of nonviolence, this law of cause and effect, of what Bruno calls guilt, of destiny. I don't know that he ever used the word karma, but certainly this reminds me of what other teachers have described as karma, that we have to experience the fruits of our actions until we walk the path of nonviolence. And the path of nonviolence isn't just not killing or hitting other people. Gandhi used the word ahimsa, which is translated as nonviolence, but actually the literal meaning is the absence of ill will in one's heart. To be free of ill will. Bruno Groening also called the path of nonviolence the teachings of Christ. And he also talked about how putting the effects of the teachings of Christ into practice, and I referred to this a little earlier, that's a way that when we bring spiritual love in, then we can begin to forgive and forget, and then we can experience grace and rise above this, what he calls lengthy and laborious cycle of cause and effect, and experiencing the effects of every negative thing we've done. So Bruno Groening came to show us the meaning of grace and the meaning of salvation, to be lifted above and to rise above. Let me just read this again. They still remain at the level of guilt and retribution, in the destiny they make for themselves. That is, everyone must, for as long as they do not walk the path of nonviolence, experience and carry in term in their own body everything that they have caused or done to other people by way of evil. This laborious, lengthy, and heavy rhythm of birth and death has been in operation since human beings have first abandoned the divine path. So how does, in 2 sentences, Bruno Groening explains how life works? That we have, and the previous sentences help, that God has given us free will to choose good or evil. When we choose evil, then we do evil. When we associate with evil, then we do evil. And as long as we continue to walk that path and not the path of nonviolence, which elsewhere he also attributes to the path of Christ, then we're caught in this cycle of having to experience the negative repercussions of every negative thing we've done. And so what's the way out? To put into practice the teachings of Christ. What are the teachings of Christ? Faith in God, surrender, humility, trust, reliance on God, charity, saying no to evil are a few of the foundation pieces that Bruno has made very clear for all of us. The recognition that we need grace, and then turning to God or a helper like Bruno. Maybe Bruno Groening, an accurate description of him as a dispenser of grace. Those are my words, not his. See if they resonate with you. So in just a few sentences, Bruno Groening is able to explain how life works. Free will, good and evil, birth and rebirth, karma, cause and effect, and the way out. The way out takes a few more sentences. So what can be said about a being like that except thank you? Thank you, God, for sending this being, and thank you, Bruno Groening, for coming. And as if so, he came to help people heal. He came to explain to them how life works. He came to save souls, to free them from evil, and to show them the way to find freedom from evil, and to explain in simple terms the rules of life. Who among us really knows, is a master of life, and really can, from our direct experience, can say, oh, this is how life is, and if you want to be successful, do this. I've never met such a person. Certainly there are people who can give us some advice or guidance on our way, but that's maybe about a specific endeavor in life. But anyway, I love Bruno Groening and his teachings. If it's not apparent, I love those teachings. And so as if that's not enough, here's what Bruno Groening said. I live so that humankind can continue to live. Man is working to destroy the world, to tear it apart. But I know how to master that tear. The earth threatens to burst. I will lay a ring around it so that it cannot burst. I am stronger than evil. So as if explaining life wasn't enough, as if coming to save souls wasn't enough, Bruno Groening came to save us from destroying ourselves and destroying this beautiful planet, this holy, sacred planet, the beauty of which we've forgotten because we're so surrounded by things made by man and not the things made by God. So that's a lot. Let's spend a little time in silence and take that in and continue to take in the good. Asking for grace and mercy, asking for help to walk the path of nonviolence so we can rise above the law of cause and effect, the destiny we've created for ourselves through past association with evil. Let's ask for grace and mercy. Or as Bruno Groening said, plead, pray, beg God for this, his mercy, freedom from the evil one. So Bruno Groening came to be a source of healing, to be a source of healing energy, to reconnect people to healing, to help people heal. And Bruno Groening came to remind us of the rules of life, how life operates, even what life is, who we are, why we're here. In short, to remind us of the teachings of Christ. Bruno Groening came here to save souls from evil. The pure divine soul, which can't be tainted by evil, but in a sense it can be trapped or surrounded or be forced to serve evil, to free the soul from evil, and to show us our part in finding that freedom. Bruno Groening came here to save the world. According to him, evil was threatening, there was a threat to destroy this very planet. Can you even fathom? And I'm just not talking about destroying, I don't believe Bruno was talking about just destroying life on the top layer of this planet, but to actually tear this planet apart to where it no longer existed. Bruno came to stop that. And as if that isn't enough, there's another thing he came to do. Bruno came to call humanity to the great, what he called the great turnaround, the great reversal, the great return back to God, back to nature. That's one way to say it. Another way to say it is to prevent what he called the great correction. Bruno Groening pointed out that if humanity as a whole didn't, or enough of us didn't change, that God, or he didn't go into details, many details that I'm aware of, but that there would be what was called a great correction. And I'll read a little bit about it. But so long as in this vale of tears, as it appears from the earthly and material perspective, there nevertheless remains, when viewed from the spiritual perspective, one little spark of hope that people will turn around. And so long as life on earth as a whole is not in danger, then God's forbearance continues. It is only in the case that any development towards the good is out of the question that the aforementioned great correction becomes unavoidable. Whether, when, and how such an event occurs, only God knows. Therefore, I emphasize once again, the more human beings serve the good, the more unlikely it is that such a decisive event will occur. Never forget, God is love itself, and only wants the very best for his children, but he will not allow his creation to be destroyed by evil. So it's a very deep topic, the Great Correction, and you can find it in the book Powers of the Spirit on page 146, and I'll do a community hour on it sometime. So Bruno Groening came to give us a warning that if humanity didn't turn around, then this event called the Great Correction would occur. And Bruno did not give a lot of details about what that would look like. But he came to prevent that, to give us another alternative for us to turn around. And if we didn't turn around, or if, as he said, life as a whole ever became threatened on this planet, then God would intervene. And it doesn't sound like that intervention would necessarily be particularly pleasant. That us turning around on our own would be much more preferable. So there we have it. This simple, humble man who never read a book, whose IQ by human standards was only slightly above average, who was by human standards very short. He was about 5'6" in American measurements. He would jokingly call himself the Little Groening. That was his mission. To help people heal. To teach them how life operates. To save souls from evil. To prevent the destruction of this planet. And to give humanity a choice. To turn around, and a warning that we need to turn around or God will turn us around. And that second might not be so pleasant. He didn't say, that's excuse me, that's me. That's kind of my interpretation. Let's just leave my interpretation out. Here's what Bruno Groening said. It is only in the case where any development towards the good is out of the question that the aforementioned great correction becomes unavoidable. Whether, when, and how such an event occurs, only God knows. Therefore, I emphasize once again, the more human beings serve the good, the more unlikely it is such a decisive event will occur. So my understanding is Bruno Groening came to prevent that, the great correction. And I won't say anything more about it because I'm just going to stick with Bruno's words and let each person seek within their heart the connection to God to understand these ideas. Take care, Nick. Good night. So, let's have a final few minutes together in silence. Taking all this in and taking in God's grace. And determining to serve the good. Bruno Groening said the more people serve the good, the more unlikely it is that the great correction would occur. So that each one of us, if we serve the good, we can do our part in helping the great turnaround, the great reversal occur. right, everyone. Thanks for joining in. And I did record this last half hour or so, so thank you for everyone for listening in. In the end, Bruno Groening had quite a large task. He had quite the mission. However, it's my understanding that actually all of us have the exact same mission that Bruno Groening does. Maybe ours is just a little smaller. We're all here to help and heal, both ourselves and others. And we're all here to serve the good. Bruno Groening showed us how to do that and taught us the rules of life so that we can serve the good. I believe in the end that what Bruno Groening came here to remind us of is how to be more like Christ. In fact, Bruno Groening almost said so himself, that he said of Christ that Christ showed us the way to live and the way back to God. And Bruno Groening said of himself that he was a mirror for us. He literally said something to the effect of that he got back up on the stage to act it out, to show us the way to live. And what is that way? To follow God. And while it's very easy to put Bruno Groening and Christ on a pedestal and say they're so much greater than I am, what if actually we're on the same path of following God, of learning how to follow God and serve God, to serve the good? Maybe Bruno and Christ are just a little better at it than the rest of us. Maybe a lot better. And yet they're here to help. So thank you all so much for joining in. This was a very special gathering for me, and I hope it was for all of you. I wish you all a blessed evening, and this recording was done on the night of a full moon, so I hope everyone can get outside and take a look at the moon tonight. And thanks so much for joining in. I wish you so much grace and so much help on the path.